The warning klaxons screamed through the cramped cockpit of the survey vessel Meridian as Commander Elias Gray fought desperately with the controls. Sparks cascaded from the navigation console while the ship bucked and rolled through the upper atmosphere of the uncharted moon below. "Come on, you piece off," Elias cursed through gritted teeth as another system failed. The hyperdrive had malfunctioned during what should have been a routine jump, dragging him into this unknown system. Now his ship was dying around him, hull plates peeling away like metallic petals as atmospheric friction tore at the vessel. The moon's surface rushed up to meet him, a tapestry of luminescent forests that pulsed with ethereal blues and greens even in the alien daylight. Elias had just enough time to register the bizarre beauty before the Meridian clipped a massive tree and went cartwheeling through the bioluminescent canopy. When consciousness returned, it came with waves of pain that made his vision blur. Elias found himself hanging upside down in his pilot's harness, blood trickling from a gash on his forehead. The cockpit was a ruin of twisted metal and flickering displays. Emergency lighting cast eerie shadows that danced with the strange, pulsing glow filtering through the cracked viewport. He managed to release his harness and drop to what had been the cockpit ceiling, biting back a groan as his ribs protested. The ship's hull had been breached in multiple places, allowing the moon's thick, humid air to seep inside. It carried strange scents, ozone and growing things, but also something else, something that made his skin tingle with an almost electric sensation. Elias was attempting to activate his emergency beacon when he heard them, footsteps approaching through the wreckage. His hand instinctively went to his sidearm, then hesitated. The steps were light, almost musical in their rhythm. Not the heavy boots of rescue personnel or the predatory stalking of dangerous wildlife. "Hello," he called out, his voice hoarse. "Is someone there?" The footsteps stopped. Then, from somewhere beyond the twisted hull, came a voice like liquid music speaking in an unfamiliar tongue. The words flowed together in harmonious phrases that seemed to resonate with the very air around him. I don't understand," Elias managed, trying to pull himself toward the breach in the hull. There was a pause, then the voice came again, this time struggling with what he recognized as galactic standard. "You hurt. Shipman from Skyfire." Elias's breath caught. Intelligent life. The xenobiology protocols he'd memorized during academy training flooded back, though they seemed inadequate for this moment. "Yes," he called back carefully. "I'm injured. Are you? Can you help me?" A figure appeared in the jagged opening of the hull, silhouetted against the pulsing forest light. Elias's breath caught again, but for entirely different reasons. She was humanoid, definitely female, but unlike any human he'd ever seen. Her skin held a subtle luminescence that seemed to echo the forest around them, marked with intricate patterns that glowed soft silver along her arms and what he could see of her neck. Her hair was long and moved as if underwater, despite the still air. She wore what appeared to be woven fabric that shifted color in the strange light, form-fitting but modest. But it was her eyes that held him captive, large, expressive, and filled with an intelligence that seemed ancient beyond her apparent years. "I am Kira," she said, her accent making the words sound like a song. "Priestess guardian of sacred places. You fell from star paths, yes." "Elias," he managed, then cleared his throat. "Commander Elias Gray, Terran Survey Corps." Kira tilted her head, studying him with those mesmerizing eyes. "Elias," she repeated, as if tasting the name. "You are not like the others in the vision dreams. Your spirit light is different." Before he could ask what she meant, she was moving toward him with fluid grace, producing a small pouch from somewhere in her robes. "You bleed. The moon spirits grow restless when life force spills without ceremony. I must tend you, or they will not let you heal." "Others?" Elias asked, but Kira was already beside him, her cool fingers gently probing the gash on his forehead. Her touch sent an unexpected shiver through him that had nothing to do with his injuries. "Be still, Skywalker," she murmured, opening her pouch to reveal herbs that glowed with their own inner light. The sacred grove calls to judge your heart. But first, you must be strong enough to face the spirits of my world. As she began applying the luminescent paste to his wounds, Elias felt the pain beginning to ebb, replaced by a warm tingling that seemed to spread through his entire body. But more than that, he felt something else, a connection, as if Kira's very presence was awakening something within him he hadn't known existed. What kind of judgment? He asked softly, though part of him already suspected the answer would change everything. Kira's hand stilled for a moment, and when she met his eyes, he saw something that made his pulse quicken, a mixture of solemnity and something that might have been anticipation. "The pond of truth," she whispered, "where spirits see all and deception means death." 3 days had passed since Kira first tended to Elias's wounds, and with each passing hour, he found himself drawn deeper into the mysteries of this luminescent world and to the enigmatic woman who had saved his life. The glowing herbs she applied twice daily had accelerated his healing beyond anything modern medicine could achieve, but it was her presence that truly made him feel alive again. "Your people's medicine is remarkable," Elias said as Kira carefully unwrapped the bandages from his ribs. They sat in her dwelling, a graceful structure woven from living branches that pulsed gently with bioluminescent sap. "Not medicine," Kira corrected softly, her fingers trailing along his now-healed skin in a way that made his breath catch. "Partnership. We ask the moonlife to share its strength, and it chooses whether to answer." Her touch lingered perhaps a moment longer than necessary before she pulled away. "You heal quickly because the spirits find you acceptable." "And if they hadn't?" Elias asked, though he suspected he already knew the answer. Kira's luminous markings dimmed slightly. "The moon protects itself from those who would harm it. Conquistadors, miners, those who see only resources to be taken." She met his eyes. "But you are different, Elias Gray. I see it in your spirit light. You observe, you wonder, but you do not seek to possess." Over the past days, their conversations had grown increasingly intimate. Kira had shared stories of her people, the Villani, and their sacred duty as guardians of the moon's most powerful sites. In return, Elias found himself opening up about his life among the stars, his fascination with discovering new worlds, and the loneliness that had driven him to choose exploration over the settled life most of his academy classmates had embraced. "There is something I must show you," Kira said now, rising gracefully. "Something you must understand if you are to remain here safely." She paused, her expression growing solemn. "The healing I have given you is temporary. Without the blessing of the sacred grove, your body will reject the moon's gift. The wounds will return, and—" She didn't need to finish. Elias stood as well, noting how the movement no longer brought pain. "What kind of blessing?" "Come," she said simply. "Words cannot prepare you for what you must see." She led him through the forest along paths that seemed to shift and change based on some invisible signal from the trees themselves. The deeper they went, the more intense the bioluminescence became, until they walked through corridors of living light that pulsed in rhythm with their heartbeats. Finally, they emerged into a circular grove where Elias stopped dead in his tracks, overwhelmed by the sight before him. In the center of the clearing lay a pond perhaps 20 meters across, its surface a mirror of liquid starlight. The water itself glowed with an inner radiance that cast dancing patterns on the surrounding trees, and as he watched, colors swirled through its depths like captured aurora. "The heart of truth," Kira whispered, moving to stand beside him. "Here, the ancient spirits judge all who would claim sanctuary on our world." "It's alive," Elias breathed, sensing something vast and patient watching from the luminous depths. "More than alive," Kira confirmed. "It is the soul of this place, the memory keeper of all who have come before." She turned to face him, and in the pond's ethereal light, her beauty was almost otherworldly. "To receive its blessing, you must enter the water as you entered this world, without artifice, without barriers, with nothing hidden." Understanding dawned, and with it, a flutter of nervousness mixed with something else. Anticipation. You mean? Completely bare, she said softly. Body and soul. The spirits must see that you carry no weapons, no devices, no deception of any kind. Her voice dropped to barely above a whisper. And I must witness, to ensure they accept you as one who comes in peace. The implications hung in the air between them like a charged field. Elias found his gaze drawn to the graceful curve of her neck, the way the grove's light played across her luminous skin, the gentle rise and fall of her breathing. And if I refuse? He asked, though they both knew he wouldn't. Kira stepped closer, close enough that he could feel the warmth radiating from her skin. Then you die, Elias Gray. But more than that. She reached up to touch his cheek with fingers soft as silk. I would lose the first person in many cycles who has made me remember what it means to hope. In that moment, surrounded by living light and faced with a choice between vulnerability and death, Elias realized his decision had been made the moment he first looked into her ancient, beautiful eyes. The grove fell silent as Elias made his decision, even the gentle whisper of wind through the luminescent leaves seeming to pause in anticipation. The pond's surface rippled without any visible disturbance, as if responding to the tension in the air. I'll do it, he said quietly, his voice steady despite the hammering of his heart. Kira nodded solemnly, but he caught the flash of something deeper in her eyes. Relief, perhaps, or something more intimate. The spirits will know if you harbor any doubt or deception, she warned. You must enter with complete trust. Elias began removing his uniform jacket, acutely aware of Kira's gaze upon him. The fabric felt strange in his hands, a reminder of the world he'd left behind when his ship crashed into this mystical realm. As he folded it carefully and set it aside, the pond's light seemed to pulse brighter, as if approving. Why must you watch? He asked, his hands hesitating at the fastenings of his shirt. I am the guardian witness, Kira replied, her voice taking on a ceremonial cadence. The spirits speak through me to judge your worthiness. If I do not see, they cannot see. She paused, and when she continued, her tone was softer, more personal. And if they reject you, I must be here to help your passage be peaceful. The weight of that responsibility settled between them as Elias continued undressing. His shirt joined the jacket, then his boots and pants, until he stood before her in only his undergarments. The grove's warm air caressed his skin, carrying scents of growing things and something else, something electric and alive that made every nerve ending tingle with awareness. Kira's breathing had grown deeper, her luminous markings brightening as she watched him. All of it, she whispered. The spirits must see you as you truly are. With a steadying breath, Elias removed the last barriers between himself and complete vulnerability. He felt exposed, but not ashamed. There was something sacred about this moment that transcended mere nakedness. In the pond's ethereal light, with Kira's reverent gaze upon him, he felt more himself than he ever had before. You are beautiful, Kira breathed, and the words carried such honest appreciation that any embarrassment melted away. The water was warm against his feet as he stepped into the pond, like liquid silk that seemed to welcome him. With each step deeper, the tingling sensation grew stronger, and he could feel something vast and ancient turning its attention to him like a sleeping giant awakening. When the water reached his waist, the first vision appeared. It materialized above the pond's surface, like a hologram of light and memory, himself as a child, staring up at the stars from his family's rooftop, dreaming of the worlds that waited beyond the sky. The image was so vivid, he could almost smell the night air of his homeworld. The spirits read your past, Kira explained softly, her voice filled with wonder. They see the roots of who you are. More visions followed as the water reached his chest. His academy graduation, the loneliness of long voyages between stars, the moment he'd chosen exploration over a comfortable position on a core world. Each memory played out in brilliant detail, and he realized with a start that Kira was seeing it all. every triumph, every failure, every moment of doubt or longing. But strangest of all was what he felt emanating from the pond itself, not judgment, but curiosity. The ancient consciousness was learning about him, tasting his experiences like a connoisseur sampling wine. The water reached his shoulders, and suddenly the visions changed. Now they showed his time on this moon, his first glimpse of Kira silhouetted in the wreckage, the way his heart had raced when she touched his wounds, the growing attraction he'd tried to keep hidden even from himself. Heat flooded his cheeks as his most private thoughts were displayed for all to see. But when he looked at Kira, expecting embarrassment or judgment, he found something else entirely. Her eyes were wide with wonder, her lips parted in surprise, and her own luminous markings were pulsing in rhythm with the pond's light. You feel for me as I feel for you," she whispered, and her voice carried such joy that his heart soared. But then she was moving, her hands going to the fastenings of her own robes. "The spirits demand truth from both of us," she said, and he understood. If she was to be his witness, to stand beside him in this sacred space, she too must be judge. Her robes fell away like water, revealing skin that glowed with its own inner light, marked with intricate patterns that pulsed like a second heartbeat.
She was breathtaking, graceful, and strong, alien and familiar all at once. As she waded into the pond beside him, her own visions began to appear. He saw her loneliness, the burden of being the last pure-blooded priestess of her people. He saw her dedication to protecting the sacred sites and the fear that her culture was slowly dying. And then, most wonderfully, he saw her growing feelings for him, the way she'd watched him sleep while tending his wounds, the hope he'd kindled in her heart that perhaps she didn't have to face the future alone. Standing waist-deep in the luminous water, their visions intertwining above the pond's surface, Elias reached for her hand. The moment their fingers touched, the entire grove exploded with light, and he felt their souls touch in a way that transcended the physical. The pond had judged them both, and found them worthy not just of healing, but of each other. The explosion of light that erupted when their hands touched gradually settled into a warm, pulsing glow that seemed to embrace them both. Elias could feel something fundamental shifting within him, as if the very essence of who he was expanding to accommodate. Something new and precious. The spirits ... Kira breathed, her eyes wide with wonder as she gazed at the light patterns swirling around them. They've never responded like this before. Above their heads, their intertwined visions had evolved into something entirely new, not memories of the past, but possibilities of the future. Images of them exploring the moon's hidden wonders together, of Kira teaching him the ancient ways while he shared the knowledge of the stars. The pond was showing them not just what they were, but what they could become. Is this normal? Elias asked, though the question seemed almost irrelevant in the face of what he was feeling. Every nerve in his body hummed with energy, and through their joined hands, he could sense Kira's emotions as clearly as his own. "Nothing about you has been normal," she replied with a smile that made his heart race. The luminous patterns on her skin were brighter now, pulsing in perfect harmony with the pond's rhythm. "The spirits have chosen to bind us, Elias. They've made us one in their eyes." As if responding to her words, the water around them grew warmer, and the light beneath the surface intensified. Elias felt an overwhelming urge to be closer to her, to complete whatever sacred process the pond had initiated. Still holding her hand, he drew her toward him through the yielding water. "Are you certain?" he whispered as their bodies came together, skin against luminous skin. I have been certain since the moment I saw your soul light," Kira interrupted her, free hand coming up to trace the line of his jaw. "The spirits don't make mistakes, beloved, and neither does my heart." Their lips met in a kiss that sent ripples of light across the pond's surface. The ancient consciousness that dwelt in these depths seemed to sigh with satisfaction, its approval. washing over them in waves of warmth and acceptance. What had begun as ritual necessity had transformed into something sacred and profound. Elias marveled at the softness of her skin, the way she fit perfectly against him, as if they'd been designed for each other. Every touch sent cascades of sensation through the psychic link the pond had forged between them, amplifying their pleasure until he could barely tell where his feelings ended and hers began. "I can feel everything you feel," he murmured against her neck, his voice rough with wonder and desire. "As I feel you," she replied, her breath warm against his ear. "The spirits have given us a gift beyond measure, to know each other completely, without fear or reservation." Their love-making was unlike anything either had experienced before. Every caress was doubled, every moment of pleasure shared and reflected. Back through their mystical connection, the pond supported them, the water itself seeming to encourage their union with gentle currents that brought them together in perfect harmony. Around them, the grove came alive with sympathetic light. Trees pulsed brighter, their bioluminescent sap flowing in patterns that matched the rhythm of the lovers' hearts. Even the air itself seemed to shimmer with approval, as two souls from different worlds found perfect unity in each other's arms. But as their passion reached its crescendo, the visions above the pond shifted, showing them something that sent a chill through their shared consciousness. Ships, human vessels approaching the moon's orbital space. Military craft mixed with mining vessels, their hulls bristling with weapons and extraction equipment.
"No," Kira gasped, her body tensing against his as she saw what the pond was revealing. The vision dreams spoke truly. Your people come not as explorers, but as conquerors. Elias felt his blood turn to ice as he recognized some of the ship configurations. Those are hegemony vessels, he said grimly. Corporate military. They're not here to rescue me. They are here to claim this system. The pond's visions grew more detailed, showing strip mining operations that would tear apart the moon's delicate ecosystem. The sacred groves burned away to reach mineral deposits beneath. They saw Kira's people driven from their homes, the ancient spirits silenced forever by industrial exploitation. "How long do we have?" Elias asked, though their psychic link had already given him the answer. 2 days, perhaps 3, Kira replied, her voice heavy with sorrow. "The spirits showed me this future when you first arrived, but I hoped your presence might change things." "It will," Elias said firmly, pulling her closer as determination filled him. "I won't let them destroy your world. There has to be a way to protect the sacred sites." Above them, the pond's visions began to shift again, showing new possibilities. Barriers of psychic energy surrounding the most important groves, illusions that would hide the sacred places from scanning equipment, ways the ancient spirits might defend themselves if properly awakened. "The pond is showing us how to fight back," Kira breathed, hope rekindling in her eyes. "But it would require both of us, human technology combined with our sacred knowledge." "Then that's what we'll do," Elias said without hesitation. "I didn't cross the galaxy to find a woman I love only to watch corporate greed destroy her world." As if in response to his words, the pond's light intensified once more, and they both felt the ancient consciousness settling more deeply into their minds. They were no longer just lovers blessed by the spirits. They were guardians, chosen to protect this sacred moon from those who would despoil it. The spirits had judged them worthy not just of love, but of responsibility. And together, they would prove that judgment correct. Dawn broke over the luminescent forest with an urgency that matched the hammering of Elias's heart as he calibrated the last of his ship's communication equipment. The past 2 days had been a blur of preparation as he and Kira worked to blend human technology with the ancient power of the sacred grove. "The fleet will be in communication range within the hour," he reported, his voice tight with tension. Through their psychic bond, he could feel Kira's anxiety mixing with his own as she made final adjustments to the crystalline amplifiers they'd positioned around the pond. The plan was audacious in its simplicity. Using his ship's transmitter array connected to the pond's psychic network, they would project a field of confusion around the most sacred sites, making them appear as barren rock to any scanning equipment. The ancient spirits, awakened and focused through the crystalline matrix, would maintain the illusion long enough for the corporate fleet to declare the moon economically unviable and move on to easier targets. But it required both of them to remain permanently linked to the pond's consciousness, essentially becoming extensions of the moon's will. There would be no going back to their old lives. "Elias," Kira called softly from where she knelt beside the water's edge. "There's something else the spirits are showing me." He looked up from his instruments to see her face pale in the grove's ethereal light. Above the pond's surface, new visions were forming, clearer and more detailed than any they'd seen before. The approaching fleet wasn't just corporate miners. Mixed among the industrial vessels were ships he recognized from intelligence briefings. Terran Navy cruisers, their hulls bearing the insignia of the Strategic Assets Division. This wasn't a corporate venture. This was a full military operation, likely launched when his ship's emergency beacon had finally reached civilized space. "They're coming to rescue me," he breathed, the realization hitting him like a physical blow. "A full naval task force. They think I'm being held prisoner by hostile aliens." The implications were staggering. If he didn't respond to their communications, they would assume the worst and begin bombardment protocols to liberate him. If he did respond and try to convince them the moon was worthless, his own commanding officers would want detailed reports, biological samples, full surveys of everything he'd discovered. There would be no hiding the truth from a military expedition. "You have to go," Kira said quietly, though her words felt like knives through their shared bond. "Your people will destroy everything if they believe you're in danger." "No." The word came out harder than he'd intended. "There has to be another way." But even as he spoke, more visions were appearing above the pond. Terran Marines in powered armor cutting through the forest. Kira's people fleeing deeper into the moon's hidden caverns, the sacred groves burned to ash by plasma bombardment. The spirits were showing them the inevitable outcome if he stayed silent. Through their link, he felt Kira's heartbreak matching his own. In 2 short days, she had become more than his lover. She was his other half. The completion of something he hadn't even known was missing from his life. The thought of losing her, of returning to the cold emptiness between stars, was almost unbearable. "There is a third option," Kira said suddenly, her voice filled with desperate hope. "But it would mean betraying everything you've sworn to protect." She gestured to the pond, where new images were forming. His ship's navigation logs, containing detailed star charts of how to reach this system. The fleet's communication frequencies, their planned approach vectors and operational timetables. "If we fed false information into your ship's systems," she continued, "made it appear that you crashed in a different system entirely. That would be treason," Elias said automatically, though his heart was already racing with the possibility. "I'd be abandoning my post, falsifying official records, leading a military expedition into hostile space based on fabricated intelligence." "Yes," Kira agreed simply. "And it would save both our worlds." The weight of the choice settled on his shoulders like a physical burden. Everything he'd been trained for, everything he'd sworn to uphold as a Terran officer, demanded that he contact the fleet immediately and cooperate fully with their rescue mission. It was his duty, his honor, his very identity. But through their psychic link, he could feel the pulse of life that flowed through this sacred moon. The ancient spirits that had judged him worthy. The woman who had become his soul's other half. The future they could build together as guardians of something truly precious. "If I do this," he said slowly, "there's no going back. I'll be a deserter, a traitor to everything I used to believe in." Kira moved to stand beside him, her hand finding his with the certainty of long practice. "You'll be protecting something worth more than duty," she said softly. "You'll be choosing love over law, life over loyalty to those who would destroy what they cannot understand. Above them, The pawn showed one final vision. The two of them years from now, older and wiser, watching as new growth covered the places where his ship had crashed. The forest had healed from his intrusion, and he had become part of its eternal dance of life and death and rebirth. The communication array crackled to life, bringing the voice of his former commanding officer across the void. "Commander Gray, this is Admiral Reeves aboard the TCS Indomitable. Please respond if you can hear this transmission." Elias looked into Kira's luminous eyes, seeing his own future reflected there. Then he reached for the transmitter controls, his fingers steady despite the magnitude of what he was about to do. "Admiral Reeves, this is Commander Gray," he replied, his voice carrying across space and time to seal his chosen fate. "I'm transmitting my last known coordinates now. Be advised, the system is a complete loss. No viable resources, no signs of intelligent life, and massive gravitational anomalies that make approach extremely hazardous." As he fed the fabricated data into the transmission, he felt Kira's joy flood through their bond, mixed with the deep satisfaction of the ancient spirits. He had chosen correctly. He had chosen love. The pawn's light pulsed around them like a benediction as the fleet received his false coordinates and began their course correction toward empty space. Here, in this sacred grove with the woman who had become his world, Commander Elias Gray died, and something new was born. A guardian, a protector, a man who had found his true home among the stars.